Joining us, we have Republican candidate for Texas Attorney General, Land Commissioner George P. Bush. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Anytime.
So we just wanted to catch up. We want voters to know, as early voting is beginning, what kind of differentiates the candidates for Attorney General, Republican candidates for Attorney General here in Texas. So starting off, if elected, what would be your top priorities as Attorney General, and what would an office under George P. Bush as Attorney General look like?
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to visit with your viewers on this important race to define the future of our great state. First and foremost, we need to secure our border. That means working with county DAs, sheriffs in our border areas. Instead of sending information packets, we need to send lawyers and paralegals to help our farmers and ranchers either build Texas Wall and or prosecute under Governor Abbott's executive order, also known as Operation Lone Star, to make sure that we're apprehending, triaging the risk, understanding who's coming in, because what we're seeing right now is our Border Patrol officials are totally overwhelmed, and we absolutely have no idea who's coming in. At 2 million apprehensions, and roughly half of those occurring in Texas, border security is number one. Number two is dealing with the consequences of an open border, and that's backing our law enforcement. We're seeing among 18 to 45-year-olds in our country, more people are dying from fentanyl toxic cocktails than any other cause of death. We need a new sense of urgency that's backing law enforcement, including in cities like Austin, restoring budgets, but also providing legal protections for law enforcement so that they feel like the state of Texas has their back so that they can do their job. There's a lot that we can do, but I will walk into the halls of power like I've done the last 4 legislative sessions on behalf of military veterans and the General Land Office, but now it's time for a new direction at the Attorney General's position.
When it comes to Operation Lone Star, in the past month or so, there's been a lot of complaints from troops on the border, whether it be issues with pay, low morale. There's been lots of issues. How would you handle those issues differently, and do you think sending more troops to the border is the true solution?
We need to send more of all the above: National Guard troops, law enforcement, DPS. Look, I'm a military veteran myself. I deployed to Afghanistan as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. I know the stresses on military deployments, whether it's in combat zones or on our southern border. It's tough, it's challenging, and the state of Texas needs to do a better job in expediting pay, taking care of the resources, because as military veterans put their lives on the line on the southern border, they need to know that the state of Texas has their back, and we will get through those challenges. As Attorney General, though, I think my role would be going to the halls of power, making sure that legally we're prosecuting Operation Lone Star. And right now, every county sheriff and DA that I talk to, or even border troops that I interact with, they say that the state of Texas is not legally prosecuting criminal trespassing claims quickly enough, because we're catching and releasing similar to what we're seeing at the federal level.
And that has a direct impact then on those local border communities, right? Not only their public safety departments are clearly overwhelmed, but then that takes away their police officers, their sheriff's abilities to respond to local incidents. Is that right?
That's right, and that's why I'm the only candidate in this race that's advocating a deputization program, so that we allow federal officials to deputize local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law, to create a multiplier effect among our law enforcement, because right now we're just dealing with the consequences of illegal immigration, and even Operation Lone Star has resulted in catch and release of illegals. Now that we're finding that federal contractors are flying illegals into blue states, hopefully one day to Delaware, to the president's home state, constituents even in blue areas are saying enough is enough. We can't absorb this volume of people. And look, I'm the son of a legal immigrant, and let's uphold that process and honor those that are patient and wait through it. But right now, we have a sense of lawlessness and disorder that this president is promoting.
So Texans already know you as a familiar face as Land Commissioner of Texas, and obviously the Bush name carries some weight here in Texas as well. But what do Texans not know about you that you want them to know?
I'm a family man. I'm a Christian. I walk in and follow the example of Jesus Christ. I've put my Christian faith front and center in this campaign. If you follow me on social media, I've hit many of the local Southern Baptist locations, but as a Catholic, I believe that religious values are under assault. I believe that the First Amendment has been manipulated for the left, but not the right, whether it's on college campuses or social media, cancel culture that we're seeing, where if you are a conservative and you put out a controversial thought, suddenly your career is done. So that's what's unique about me, is that I'm truly a public servant. I'm a family man. I'm a soccer dad. I got 2 boys who are 8 and 6, and frankly, that's my entire social life, is being a good husband and a good dad.
So circling back to your border policy that we spoke of before, that was a heavy focus of your first political campaign ad. I just wanted to ask, it's something that Ken Paxton has also kind of prided himself on. He's done several border trips himself. He's held 12 other attorneys general at the border. How would you, I guess, do things differently than what he's doing now specifically, aside from, maybe encouraging the governor to add more troops at the border? What would you do different than Ken Paxton at the border?
Well, he's just suing the federal government, which is important, and we can debate basically his win-loss record, which I don't believe is strong enough as it should be. But what he's not doing is helping local and county officials, leveraging the power of the state of Texas to backstop our local law enforcement. I'm the only candidate in this race that's promoting the idea of a mobile prosecution unit to deploy, similar to a military deployment, of deploying whatever we have here in Austin to help our border communities. I'm also the only proponent and first in the courthouse in the idea of suing the federal government under the National Impoundment Control Act to compel the federal government to spend money on the so-called Trump wall because 300 miles was yet to be constructed. And as land commissioner, I'm actually building a wall. But that's what I would be doing differently, is actually leveraging the resources, rolling up our sleeves, finding savings, and addressing this crisis instead of doing press conferences on the border. And I'm the only candidate that's actually driven the entire border in this campaign. I went from El Paso to Brownsville, 1,200 miles over 4 days, and talking with local law enforcement, many of whom said they've never gotten a call or an email from their attorney general.
Fellow candidate Louis Gomer was actually just here a while ago and said that he thinks you could do more as current land commissioner to address issues at the border. Do you think that, I guess just countering that point, you're the only one that's driven the border. What's your counter to that point of his?
There's not much more legally we can do. We're already in the courthouse compelling the federal government under the National Impoundment Control Act to spend money, which gives me standing to bring a lawsuit against the Biden administration. But also constructing wall. The first portions of the Texas wall were on GLO lands. And so knowing in early 21 that Biden was going to build another inch of wall, I pledged all of the acreage of the state of Texas over to the governor's office and also Texas Facilities Commission to construct wall. I've also signed a memorandum of understanding with our Border Patrol to allow for accessibility to any portions of that 250,000 acres to interdict, apprehend, and detain illegal immigrants. I'm not sure of much more we can do, but as Attorney General, I will tell you that there's a lot more that we can do and we should be doing because information packets and press advisories isn't going to get the job done and fill in the gap of what the Biden administration is neglecting to do.
Gomer was also critical of your efforts to, his words not mine, reimagine the Alamo rather than remember the Alamo. What's your response to that? Because I know the whole Alamo situation was pretty lengthy and a bit complicated.
Yeah, I'm really proud of my track record on the grounds of the Alamo. When I showed up to office 7 years ago, it was literally falling apart. Texas A&M showed a study that said basically if the state of Texas did not intervene, that it wouldn't be around for our children and our grandchildren. I'm proud to report we've closed Alamo Street. I'm proud to report this week that Ripley's, believe it or not, will no longer be on the grounds of the Alamo where honorable defenders were involved. We've obtained historic appropriations for the church, the Long Barrack. We've rebuilt the Palisades, the 18-pounder cannon on the southwest corner of the fence. And so we're really excited with the story that we're telling more purposely, more proudly than ever before. And as a military veteran, I drilled at Lackland Air Force Base, and I've been to many commissioning ceremonies. And so as a vet, I know more than anybody that the story of the Alamo is so essential to the children and grandchildren of Texas to understand what the true price of freedom really is.
You've been highly critical of incumbent Ken Paxton's legal woes. How would you restore faith to the office if elected?
Well, I think it's partly being a Christian, showing supplication, humility to the legislature, to the people of Texas, to other county DAs, and restoring that trust. I pride myself on my relationships not only in the legislature, but also with county judges and DAs and county sheriffs. So I'm going to go on a roadshow similar to this campaign throughout the state of Texas, reconnect the office, but restore authorities. During Ken Paxton's time, we've seen that voting fraud, which is a top issue for conservatives in Texas, he has lost that remaining area of authority to prosecute those claims. We need to go back into the legislature, amend the Constitution, restore authorities on human trafficking, on capital crimes, on the big issues that's facing Texans in a very violent situation where we see a spike, including here in Austin, of an all-time high rate of homicides. And that's where the AG needs to step in. But if you're facing your own legal difficulties, how can you address the criminal issues that are facing our state?
And polling still shows that the Trump endorsement still carries some weight here in Texas. Obviously, he's endorsed Ken Paxton. Do you think that President Trump endorsed the wrong candidate in this race?
Absolutely. He made a mistake. I'm going to be the better candidate to defend the America First policies. In fact, my campaign is called Texas First. And I will, unlike Ken, beat the Democrat. That's why I'm in this, is not to tear down fellow Republicans. I will point out the facts on other people's records. But I'm here to beat Democrats, keep Texas the greatest state and the greatest country the world has ever seen. But the way we do that is put the best football team on the field. And Ken is the lowest vote getter of all Republicans 4 years ago. With bribery corruption charges, he's definitely going to lose, and we can't afford to take that risk as Republicans.
What's the risk that Republicans run if Ken Paxton is the candidate coming out of this primary and he is the Republican on the ticket come November?
I'll tell you what, Beto O'Rourke is raising a lot of money, and he fires up the left wing of the Democratic Party and will drive up voting turnout. And so my fear is that with bribery corruption charges facing Ken Paxton, that you'll see him not only lose but drag down the rest of the ticket. And any Republican that's aspiring for office in our great state has to weigh that when they're considering who to vote for, who to support in this race. Do we go with a proven vote getter who's a top vote getter in 2014, 2018, who can expand a conservative message in the Hispanic community in South Texas, all parts of our state, to new Texans as well, all the Californians that are moving here? I'm that guy, and Ken can't. And so when you think about the future of the state in the next 4 years, you can't go with somebody that's going to be an unproven liability.
Focusing back on the primary, recent polling shows that you and Louis Gomer are polling pretty closely and could potentially be pushing this to a runoff. What makes you the better candidate over Congressman Gomer?
Well, just like I would say in connection with any other candidate, I'm the only proven executive that's actually sued the federal government and won on behalf of the state of Texas, with proven executive experience in the private, public sectors and in the U.S. military. I bring that to the job day one, and I'm ready to fight. We also have the best get out the vote effort probably in AG history, with 600 volunteers knocking on over 60,000 doors, making over 30,000 phone calls. So I'm super excited about our get out the vote effort. Our 50-stop tour throughout the state of Texas, part of our Texas First tour. We're really excited to get our message out and restore honor and integrity to our top cop position.
And last question for you is just any kind of lasting tip you wanted to give Texans during early voting and ahead of official voting day on March 1st.
Go out there and exercise your right to vote. Early voting starts February 14th, and we'd love to see a record amount of Texans come out to the polls. This is a super important race. You always hear from politicians it's the most important election of your lifetime, but this truly is, as our state continues to grow and attract new investment, new ideas. Even a South African dropout, the wealthiest man in the world, comes to Texas to start a business here in Central Texas, launching Texans into space. Only that can happen in our great state. But we can't keep that streak of prosperity going if we continue to put corrupt officials on our slate of Republicans. And so that's why I'm in this race, and I'm encouraging you to go out and vote early.
And last question for you. Louis Gomer said he wouldn't be afraid to challenge the governor on certain mandates that he issues, et cetera. How would you play along with the governor? Because as we've seen, the top three leaders of our state have all been, they've gotten along pretty well. Would you be willing to go against the grain and speak up against the governor if you were elected Attorney General?
It depends on the circumstance, but we have a great relationship. We work together shoulder to shoulder in response to Hurricane Harvey, the most devastating storm in our state's history. And I'm a proud supporter of his as well, and will continue to be. And so as the next Attorney General, I'm going to defend the will of the legislature and the laws that they put forward and that the governor signs off on. And so are there debates right now on the Texas Disaster Act and the response on mask mandates? Absolutely, and we should have that in the halls of power in the legislature. But as Attorney General, my role is going to be to defend those laws, expressed to the will of the people, and not being a career politician. You know, a lot of folks, in fact, everybody else in this campaign have been in government way too long, I think over 20 years. It's time for new ideas, new leadership that will stand up for the people.
All right, Commissioner Bush, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.